Poonam, we've been talking for the past few weeks about this, and it really is a privilege to have this conversation with you. Poonam, you lost your father-in-law to COVID 2 months ago, and the circumstances in which the experience has unfolded was very difficult, to say the least. And in the conversations that we have had, I've experienced this deep sense of shared humanity, this realization around the fact that so many people, some of them known to us and so many unknown to us, are losing family members to COVID and going through this shared experience. Even though the manifestations in our lives might look different, how we deal with it looks different, and the intention I think we both shared in having this conversation is our way of connecting with all those families out there who are going through this. Thank you for your courage in talking about an experience that's still raw.
Sonam, thank you so much for talking about this. I think there are many people out there in the world universally actually going through a similar feeling, and if this can help anybody, this can help soothe anybody. That's the whole point, right? That's why we are doing this, and I'm very honored that we are talking about it today. I'll do my best to talk about it and share with you all as much as I can about my own experience.
Thank you, Poonam. Poonam, to begin with, and this is something we've exchanged, what does it look like to lose a family member in times of COVID? What are the circumstances like? What is the ground reality that one goes through and experiences? If you're able to, if you could share a little bit around that.
2020 has been a crazy year universally. It has affected people in many ways. The worst being losing a family member, Sonam, like losing someone close. You can't see COVID, and that's why we are not being able to, any battle, any war, you can see things. Here, COVID, you cannot really see what's going on. And suddenly you hear of someone being affected and losing that someone. To begin with, I think it's this grief is also associated with a huge shock. Like for us, it was we live in Paris, and our my father-in-law and mother-in-law live in India, and we just heard. And my father-in-law was one of those rare father-in-laws who treated his daughters-in-law. We had two. More than his daughter. He doesn't have daughters. He didn't have daughters. He has two sons, and he's treated us like daughters. So he was my dad. He was my dad, and very fit, very fit. We would always, in my heart, I think he'd live 100 years and over. That's what I used to always believe, because he was so fit, so much into yoga, so much into meditation, so much into health. Taking care of oneself. But that's one thing that I realized about COVID. It can hit anybody. It doesn't matter if you have great immunity, if you don't have great immunity. It can hit anybody, anybody. So the shock that, and because we can't see COVID, we keep thinking it's not going to happen to us. Anyway, we think of death like that, right? Like it's not going to happen to me. It's going to happen to someone else.
Right.
So when it happens to you, the first feeling is of shock. The first few days is extremely shocking. So within 2 days, he was at the hospital, and he left us within 2 days. And the fact that we couldn't travel back, home, and we couldn't be there for mama was the worst. It's really, losing a parent is the worst feeling in the world. To give you a little background, Sonam, I lost my dad when I was 22 to cancer. And around that time, I'd lost my dad's elder brother and my dad's sister as well. And now we lost my father-in-law to COVID, and then I lost my grandfather also right 1 month after. So it has been a very heavy time, very intense time. But like I was saying, I think this feeling of grief, it's a feeling, right? It's a feeling like happiness and sadness, and grief is associated with immense pain and immense shock,
Mm.
especially around this time. So the first few days you're in so much shock, your body is in so much shock that just doing the normal things, the daily things that you do every day, like taking a shower, eating your food,
Mm. Mm.
cooking food, becomes difficult. So just to get your body to do that,
Yeah.
it's very, very difficult, to be in shock, to speak to family members, take all those calls of all the kind people around you, those condolence messages, along with just living, is is what the first 2 weeks look like. So I just want to tell people, be kind to yourself around this time. Rest as much as you can. Soak in the feeling of what has happened.
Right.
It's also shocking, like I said, because you don't think it's going to happen to you.
Mm.
And it's so painful because suddenly it dawns upon you that you're never going to see that person again physically. You will never meet that person again physically,
Mm.
which is which is it's pain. And another thing that I think comes along with grief is, in the first few weeks, I think, of losing someone very dear to you, is the sense of guilt. You know, what I mean is, the first thing that you think about is, what is the last conversation that I had with the person that
Yeah.
you've lost. And sometimes we're so busy in our lives, Sonam, we and especially parents, I think we take for granted so much, sometimes cutting their calls or just saying, I'll call you back, because we think that they're always going to be around. So I think that is something to learn from this, that every time you speak to anybody, and especially to your parents, express yourself, be there for them like they've been there for you, so that the sense of guilt doesn't seep in. Did I make the person proud? Did I do what he wanted me to do, or what he expected of me? That guilt feeling also is very strong the first few days. You go back to all the memories attached to that person, right? Because that's the only thing that you can hold on to, because physically the person isn't there anymore.
Mm. I think what
So
you're sharing, Poonam, is so powerful. And we all get caught up. Life happens to all of us, and our jobs, our goals, pursuits, all of that is at the forefront of things. And parents, the families that are losing children, and it's difficult. And what you're talking about is so relevant, that sense of guilt, because we're so caught up with everything in our life that we miss out those moments. And then later this guilt is there, that what if I had done differently? And I think it also makes us wonder, right? If we knew we had that family member, or even our own life, for just the coming few months, how would we live differently? We would live differently. And can we somehow bring that quality of relationship in an interaction in our day to day with people around us? I think absolutely, Poonam.
yeah, Sonam, absolutely. You're right here. Taking people for granted, and really being aware of the fact that we are mortal beings and I can lose anything anytime. Being kind to people around you and really listening to them. Being involved in what they have to say, especially family members or people who are close to you. We tend to take people who are closest to you for granted the most, because we think they'll understand. But really, when you lose someone, the first thing you think about is, what were the last few conversations? Was I really there for the person? Did I do all the things that the person expected me to do?
Yeah.
And that it's very, very, very important to be aware of this fact that we are mortal beings. And none of these things that we do is more important than the person and the relationship itself.
And I think it's such a conscious thing we need to remind ourselves,
Every day.
because it's we're all human beings, right? I mean, I've experienced this as well. We get caught up in our life, and we need to consciously remind ourselves that we cannot take it for granted. And I think this is what you just said, right? The fact that we are mortal, I think this is such a fundamental fact that we all know. The day we are born, we're going to die. I mean, we know this for a fact, that we are going to die. But somehow this understanding of, I don't know where the mysticism is. Perhaps we don't know what happens after death, what that looks like, when it can happen. Yeah, we tend to think it's far
And we're
out.
scared. Yeah. And we
Yeah.
think it's not going to happen to us, somehow. Yes,
Yeah.
Sonam, absolutely. I think death is something that we must speak about more often because it is an inevitable part of our lives.
Hmm.
Somehow I feel we do not speak about it in front of kids. I have an 8-year-old son who lost his grandfather. And like I said, he was a
Hmm.
fantastic, phenomenal man. He was a fantastic grandfather, a fantastic father-in-law, fantastic everything, a friend, everything, a fantastic husband. And we made sure this time that Rudra, my son, we saw everything. We showed him everything. We went. This was his first encounter with death, someone with someone's death. Someone who's so close. It is very important, I think, to change the dialogue of death. We are also scared of it, that we do not talk about it without realizing it is something so. It is a cycle. You live, like you said, and you die.
Hmm.
And it is important to talk about it and not sweep it under the rug, not be in that denial that it's not going to happen to you. Though it's very easy to be in the denial state, I think it's also very important to sit and grieve through it, sit and be in your emotions and feel the pain, because the moment you suppress it, it
Hmm.
is going to manifest in different ways you can't imagine
Hmm.
in your life, and that affects kids directly. I think kids need to be educated about death. And this is how they will learn to be in the present moment and to be appreciative of the present moment, So
Absolutely.
we did take Rudra through the whole process. He was there. We saw a video, on WhatsApp, as difficult as it was to cry together as a family as much as we could do. Thanks to technology, we could at least be together on that call. But we did not hide anything from the child. And the funny thing is, Sonam, I'd just like to bring this up here. We think kids don't understand. Man, kids understand more than us energetically. It's difficult for them to put it in words how they're feeling, because grief is something that is anyway very difficult to talk about.
Yeah.
Imagine for us, so for kids it's something else, but it's not like they don't feel it.
Yeah.
Grief also comes in waves. I think there are good days and there are bad days. After the first initial few days of shock,
Yeah.
there are these good days and bad days. And for kids, that's what happens, right? They forget when they're playing with their friends, but they come back, and some memory of his grandfather, he comes back to it, and he's
Yeah.
crying, or he's just
Hmm.
feeling sad.
Yeah.
And I think it's our responsibility as parents to see how they're feeling and to tell them that it's okay, to be there for them, to love them, to listen to them,
Hmm.
to make them feel that what they are feeling is important. And somehow intuitively, parents always know that the child is grieving. I think it's our responsibility to catch that moment when they're grieving. It can be anything. They could be screaming, they could keep quiet, they could express it in sadness, they could express it in crying, they could express it in memories that they've shared with the person.
Right.
And it is very important to, like we are there for our friends, like adults, it's very important for us to be there for our kids and tell them it's okay.
Right.
We understand what you're going through, because I'm going through the same. It's normal to go through this, and it is going to be okay. Time will heal.
Right.
I think it's important to talk about death more openly
Yeah.
with kids.
Right. And I mean, I can only imagine the questions, even for us, right? Some aspects around how it happened, what happened is something you can still talk to them about and explain. But why did it happen? Sometimes the anger or the confusion in their mind, and like you said, right, the person is not physically present with us anymore. How
Yeah,
does a child process that? And
process.
sometimes we don't have these answers, and
No.
it's okay to acknowledge with them that even we don't have all these answers. And I think just in that moment, sharing that feeling, letting everybody grieve in their own way. And like you said, kids might show this in various ways. And that's where the attunement comes in to really, I think, see what's happening with them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's important to tell the kids that no parent is, the child, uh, like you said, Sonam, it's very important to tell your kids that you're not perfect and you don't have the answers to everything. You just know that this is something, this is how everything works, right? You're born and then you die. Everything is a cycle.
Yeah.
But it is important to tell them that you don't have answers to everything, but you do share the emotion and you do understand that it's painful.
And I really liked what you shared around, we're not denying anything. And just the way we don't deny the happy emotions, the grieving is
Yes.
also a process. And life, death, everything is, I think, somewhere, again, this comes down to how we shut all the discomfort out in our life. And perhaps, this could be one of the reasons why we're so scared of death and the uncertainty around it, despite knowing that it is the only given fact of our life. But
Absolutely.
yet, this is what it is, and we are working through it. I think all of us, to some extent.
Absolutely. Sonam, I'd love to talk about something which I'm experiencing so profoundly and so strongly at this moment.
Yeah.
When I lost my father, I was 22, and he, in fact, was diagnosed with cancer when I was 16. So really, that young age, you don't understand anything. You don't. It's so you're so young. And I remember the moment, and I shared a very, very, very strong connection with my dad. A very spiritual kind of love we had for each other. Everybody in my family, they knew this. We were extremely close, and almost like an envious relationship. We had that. So the moment I lost him, I remember my first reaction was to shut everything and live in denial for about 4 to 5 years. You will instantly, your normal reaction would be find something that suits you. So be it addictions or be it hanging out with friends all the time, and to not sit with this emotion. This is what I did when my father passed away when I was 22. This time all those triggers have come back because I think I took my father-in-law so much as my father. I think he filled in that spot so beautifully also. That all those triggers have come up on surface for me. But the pain is the same, but the way I'm handling it, I can see it's so different. Back then I was running away. This time I'm giving myself, even if it is difficult, I'm sitting down in pain and I'm crying it out, and I am speaking about another thing that helps, I think, is speaking about good memories that you had with the person. A loss of a person is always attached to pain, but I think changing the dialogue in the mind, that you can attach it to great memories too. Use it as a driver, almost use it as a transformation tool. Sit, grieve, feel all the pain, and then make sure that it is your responsibility to tell your mind very, very one step at a time, very softly, very gently tell yourself that the memory of the person, lost person, doesn't always have to be attached with pain. It changes over time. Make it into a driver, make it into a transformation of what he wanted me to be, what he, if you're so close to the person, obviously he believes in you in some way. Think of all those good memories, the good things that you learned from them, and keeping them alive in your memories in a, this is what happens, right? Like I was stuck in depression almost, running away back then when I was 22. But now I'm dealing with it. At least I'm trying to, Sonam. It's very difficult, but I'm trying to deal with it heads on, feel all the feelings, and know that I can transform this.
Yeah, and Poonam, I think what you were also saying around, keeping the memories alive, I think also sometimes we can tend to feel that in order to get past the grieving process, we must forget somebody. That may not be the case. Keeping them very much, alive in our memories and bringing back that fondness. And again, I think it's just about being comfortable with all the kinds of emotions that we have, the discomfort that's coming up, which is really hard, to be honest.
Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. But Sonam, you can't get over someone. I can't suddenly say that I've gotten over my dad or my father-in-law or all the people that I've lost in my life. They are very much present in my daily life. Like I said, there are waves that come, and there are good days and there are bad days. And you can't get over someone. You've got to, it is your responsibility. It is very difficult. I think people fall into depression and they are there, and my heart goes out to people like that. And we all have our bad days, Sonam. I am so depressed some moments, some days, but it is my responsibility to remember them fondly. A legacy for me is this, there's so much that I've learned from my father-in-law and my father. And I tend to, as difficult as it is, like I remember with my father, I did not put his picture for the longest time around because I was running away, escaping. This time, his pictures are everywhere. So he reminds me of his presence in my daily life, how he used to meditate, how he used to be, how kind he was, how practical he was, all of those things. So every time I see his picture, even with the tears in my eyes, I know that there are things that he's taught us which cannot be forgotten, which has to be kept alive, which is your responsibility
Yeah.
to speak about it, to change it into good memories, to remember the good memories and always remember them. It gives you more strength to live your life, to be able to continue living your life.
Absolutely. That's such a beautiful feeling, emotion to have, from someone who's passed on. Poonam, do you have any perhaps words of advice for people who are reaching out to families who've lost family members? How can people support the family members better?
Yeah. Yes, I think this is such an awkward situation for so many people. I get so many messages. Usually, I'm an easy person to talk to, so people do message me, but they also do message saying, I don't know what to say. And it is so obvious, man. You don't know what to say, something as shocking and something as hurt, painful as this. But, really, it is very nice to receive messages of condolences, messages, kind messages. It is really very nice. It is soothing. It gives you a feeling that you're not alone, and people around, they understand. So go ahead, send your message and send it from your heart. The only one advice I'd like to give you is, if you can add that one memory that you had with the person who's passed on to the higher realms, write that down. Because the only thing that I want to hear around this time is, still now, even now, about my dad and my father-in-law, it's really great to hear stories that about them that they shared with other people, their experiences with other people. What did you think of the person who's passed on? It's really nice to know, anything that you can hold on to, any information that you get about the person through someone else, it's very, very soothing. So go ahead, send that message from your heart, right? Don't feel awkward. No, it's really, this is the last thing that we think about when we are receiving your messages. We receive it with a lot of grace, it really is very helpful. So go ahead, write that message from your heart, write a memory that you've shared with the person. It's not awkward at all.
Yeah. And I think,
and,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is bringing me back to what we were talking about earlier. I think that sense of discomfort also comes from the fact that we are so uncomfortable, or majority of us are so uncomfortable with death, and because of that discomfort, it projects onto how we even interact when somebody else loses a family member. So I think it's work in progress for all of us to start becoming comfortable with the reality that death is. Yeah.
Don't judge yourself for whatever message comes. Yeah, send it across. It's always received with a lot of I love reading these messages, man. So yeah, it's awkward, but go ahead. It's time to change that. Go ahead, speak to the person, and along with your condolence message, if you can, check up on the person for the next 2-3 months. Genuinely be there. Genuinely listen. Genuinely send them a message saying, "I'm here to listen to you if you need me."
Yeah.
Keep in touch to know, the first few days anyway very shocking, but even after that, the first year itself is huge. So go ahead, and if you really want to help, call them, be there for them. That helps a lot. And also know that the person who's lost someone, sometimes it's such a personal feeling, Sonam, that you don't even like to talk about it. There are some people like that. I like to talk about it. There's some people it's so personal that they don't like to talk about it. Give them that much space. Just be there to listen. I think that's already great.
This also requires some level of just being sensitive to what is happening and just being aware of who that person is and what is their requirement and need in that moment. Because again, different people deal with it very differently. Some prefer to get back to work full swing, while some need their own space. Some like to talk, some do not prefer to talk. And I think we do our bit and then see how the person responds, and also kind of respecting that in their space and giving them what
completely. Yeah, like you said, gauge what the person needs, and and just be there in whatever way that you can, even without speaking about what has passed. Just being there, your presence and your genuine presence, that genuine listening skill. It helps a lot. It helps a lot. There's one more thing that's coming to me, Sonam, that I wanted to talk about is, there's also the sense of guilt and shame once you've lost someone, because like we said, we don't talk about death so openly. Once we've lost someone, you tend to think, is it okay for me to get out and party and meet my friends and be okay? And I want to say to those people who've lost their close members, yes, it is. There's so much that your body is going through. There's so much that your mind is going through. If you're feeling good in one day, even if it has been 10 days or something, if you just want to go out and have a good time with your friends, please go ahead. Don't think of the judgments. Go ahead and do what you need to. You still need to carry on with your life. The person who's passed on, nobody would wish this upon you, that you sit and grieve all the time. It's not possible. You need a break from grieving too. You need to kind of lift up your spirits and say, it's okay, you still have to live your life.
Yeah.
So, the person who's passed on also would like you to live your life. So don't feel guilty about having a good time after you have lost someone.
Yeah.
Don't care about what people are going to say. None of this matters. Do what you need to do for yourself.
Yeah.
Get help. Speak to someone. Speak to a therapist if you need to. Speaking to people who've had similar experiences also helps a lot.
Absolutely. And I think what you're sharing is beautiful. It's being aware of ourselves and what we need in that moment. I think not getting kind of, caught up in the narratives of what one should be doing.
Absolutely.
And of course, being aware that, am I partying because I'm trying to shut out my emotions? Of course, that may not be healthy, but, if it's really helping you, absolutely one must do it. And I think that comes with being aware of what you need specifically and who you
at that moment. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes, completely. I think somewhere deep down, you're even scared of what are people going to say? I've just lost someone so close. No, there is no what you should do or what you shouldn't do. You should really do what you feel like. I mean, like I said, you need a break from all that crying and all that stress that you're going through. So go ahead and do it, Yeah.
Beautifully said, Poonam. Thank you so much for this conversation, for with courage and grace, sharing an experience that's still raw, an experience that you are still working through. Thank you so much, Poonam.
Sonam, you made it so easy. Thank you so much. While it's very difficult to talk about, I think it's very important to talk about this. So I hope this conversation has touched even one or two people. I hope it helps someone out there in the world.
I'm sure.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Sonam.
Thank you, Poonam.